you reminded me of something that Casey and I were talking about the other day. Like one of the characteristics that's needed, and you guys, I know, will reaffirm this because you've lived this life to manage 2023 and try to win, stay alive, as Patrick said in 2024. You're winning if you're alive, is like the most needed characteristic, and it's not usually in a salesperson's repertoire of skills, is resiliency and grit. Right? Like when you've been told it's going to get better for 2 years, you got to be resilient, and you got to have some grit to you to kind of work through. It's like you're in round 9 of the fight. It's easy to be fresh in round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4. We're in round 9 now, and now it's about resiliency and grit, which usually isn't a salesperson's top characteristic. Usually we want them to be bubbly and lighting up the room and, you know what I mean, energetic. And so winning right now is all about resiliency and grit. Patrick, same question. Like, what do you say when your team's looking at you? Sometimes little with the 10,000, foot stare, like, what's going on, man? What are we doing here? How are we gonna win? Exactly.
I think the first thing we try to focus on is understanding what we can control. And it's a conversation that you unfortunately have to have over and over and over and over. We don't control the markets. And there's always a part for me historically where I've watched so much CNBC, so much market commentary, so much Fed commentary that I say, okay, I have zero control of what those are going to be. I know that I can control my disciplines, right? And so I think getting out of that space where we're hearing, is it going to be good and going to be bad? And then we get hopeful and then we get, a little down. It's more about what can I control in the moment, right? And so taking people back to that and saying, here are the disciplines that I need to do every day. And if I just focus on them, and you're right, if I'm resilient and I'm here over time, I'm going to capture what Tony talked about. Eventually the market heals. Maybe it'll be fast. Maybe it won't be. But if there's not a lot of people left to take up the market share, you'll slot into one of those pockets if you can just remain positive and kind of stay in the groove. I think, for a lot of people, once they get down, they start to actually lose belief in themselves as an originator. And this is the part where long into the game, I find myself saying, this is the market speaking. Like we have to unwind the fact that because we're not doing a lot of deals that we're no longer good at what we do. And that's just not the truth. So understanding too, how to separate that. I'm not what the market is doing or how the market is going, but I'm actually a really, really good originator who's just kind of being subject to some market forces right now. It can be more of a psychological game than it can be anything else.
There's forces out there that we're not used to dealing with, and I'll give you some examples. Lately it's so price competitive right now. And part of the reason for that is because the pipelines are so anemic. And a lot of it is, banks and credit unions. We see this with brokers where there's just no transactions. And so one of the things, we're kind of in this period of time where I feel like people are willing to do loans for a lot less total revenue, a lot less profit. We see banks and credit unions that, I hate to say this, but they do have the advantage of selling whatever rate they want, and they can decide to make those decisions. And so I say all that not because, hey, let's go all work for a bank or credit union, but recognizing that there's tactics being used by some of our competitors that are not typically deployed in a normal market. And then we're dealing with that. And so all of a sudden what happens is your pull-through numbers go way down from what you're used to them being. And then you start looking for reasons why that's happening. Maybe it's my company. Maybe it's me. Maybe our rates are too high, whatever the case may be. You start pointing it all, trying to put your finger on what's happening. And what's happening is potentially, and a lot of it is the way that people are competing to win business, and their motivation behind the decisions they're making do not align with the decisions that would be made in a more standard market where rates, where there's a normal amount of business out there. And so it's kind of like, your cheese has moved a little bit. To reference back to that book, it is different, and it's not you, but understanding why it's different, and then making those adjustments in both your the way that you deal with that, the way that you address those challenges, but also giving yourself a break that you're probably gonna your pull through. I've heard talk to some really good mortgage people whose pull through numbers are as low as 30% right now. 70% of their loans they're getting price shocked and potentially losing, especially in the more competitive markets. That's never been the case. If you do a good job, take a good application, build rapport, do the things we were taught to do, you would expect to have 75% pull through, not 25% pull through. So then what do you have to do? Well, you have to adjust your expectations. You have to get more leads than you ever did. Yeah, you probably need to work harder than you ever have in order to get the same result that you're used to getting, and it might even be a little bit less than that. So